You're a professional Pokemon player. How long have you played Pokemon for?
I've been playing since 2010.
God damn, I was not expecting that. Holy man. Okay, so you did tell me that off stream you played Hearthstone, or not off stream, off recording you played Hearthstone for a little bit. You played from, as far as we can tell, based on your memory, from Classic at least to like Goblins versus Gnomes Grand Tournament, somewhere around there. But regardless, I'm only going to show you cards from 2018 onwards. So I don't think you'll really have to see, or you won't see anything that is familiar.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Yeah, I played between then and now. I played a little bit of Demon Hunter because I heard there was a new class out, and I played Battlegrounds before as well. But
okay. Okay. Cool. Do you remember what your highest rank was in Hearthstone?
I would always just play the legend, then I would stop. Like I would do like whenever I got bored of Pokemon or had like free time, I would like go. I would usually just copy a Druid deck from Dog, and then I would just try and grind to legend in like the last week of the season, or last week of the month, or like in the middle of the month when I would just had extra time to work with. So
we're gonna start off with a pretty simple one to get you back into the swing of things. Okay, what do you think of this card? You have probably seen this before, but this card has changed a little bit.
Okay, yeah. Ancient of Lore. Definitely have played with this one before. I don't remember. I think its previous stats was 5/5, though.
Yes.
7 drop, 5/5, and then draw 2 or restore 7 health. I think it was 5 health. I don't actually remember.
I believe it was 5 health. Dude, oh my God. You have a sick memory, man. If you're Jesus. All right.
Yeah, I think it was draw 2 or 5 health. And it was definitely good in, I mean, Druid was always like an okay deck back when I played. Like sometimes it'd have its moments, but it was like more of an okay deck than a like super powerful tier 1 deck, it always felt like. And this card you did play as 2 of back then, and it does have increased stats, but I'm pretty sure like the power curve in Hearthstone has gone up quite a bit since I've played. As far as guessing on whether this is good or bad, I guess also is like kind of a question is like, in Druid, is this good, but how good is Druid, right? So my guess would be, man, that's tough because the stats have increased, but the power curve I think is definitely increased in Hearthstone. So I'm going to go with that this card is probably not very good right now.
Yeah, so your analysis is actually like really, really spot on. In the current context of Druid, but regardless of how good it is, this card is not played at all.
Yeah.
This card got nerfed. I don't know if you remember, this card got nerfed like a really long time ago. They made it like so it only drew 1 card for a really long time. And then they're like, oh, let's revert all these changes, but also buff it and bring it back into standard. No one plays this card. So the reason I showed you this one specifically is because I think this is a very good gauge to see how far Hearthstone power creep has come, which you identified pretty fast. So finale means if you play this card and it would use up your remaining mana, all of your remaining mana, the finale would proc.
Sheesh. So 4 mana, draw 3 cards is not, I mean, you're not doing much else on your early turns if you're spending 4 mana to draw 3 cards. You don't have much other mana to have many other potential plays. Like I remember the old mage card was 3 mana, draw 2, I believe.
Yes.
But that's also not giving you too much room to work. So like control mage has always been something that's like floated in and out back when I played. So like in a control mage deck, this seems okay. You're getting cards to work with to be able to control the board, and then you're getting a copy of one of the 3 cards you draw to answer the current situation you're in. So if control mage is good, this card seems good. But if control mage is not good, then, or hasn't been good for a while, then this card is probably just considered a bad card. Because any kind of like more aggressive or tempo deck, I don't think you have time to play this card. But Control Mage is always a really cool deck, so I'm just gonna hope it's still a good deck right now. I'm gonna say this card is pretty solid right now.
So in terms of what you said about control versus like regular decks, this card's actually played in tempo decks, and I guess I'm gonna call it Burn Mage. Yeah, this card is surprisingly really great because it's not only drawing cards, it's specific, right? Like to draw spells, and some decks really want to draw specific spells. Like in Pokemon, right? There's sometimes where you really want to get like an item card or something, or an energy specifically, and that's a really, really big deal. So this card has actually ended up being played in a variety of different mage decks, and it's one of the most impactful mage cards in a very long time, surprisingly. Okay, so this is a brand new version of a card. You probably have not seen this before. This is called the Location. The way this works is that you play it on the board, and it has 2 durability. You could use it, and then you can only use it every other turn.
I mean, that is, I feel like this would be played in a more minion heavy deck, right? Because you're copying minions, but I guess if there's like I guess if you're creating a big minion, then getting a copy of that big minion, like I'm thinking like back to Mountain Giant, like you could play this, like you could play Mountain Giant for 0, then copy a Mountain Giant, then that Mountain Giant swings is like where my thought process is going. But it feels like for a more creature-centered deck, this would be like too slow because you'd be spending 3 mana to not summon a creature for a turn. And then, or could you, if there's a creature in play already, could you put this in play and then get a copy of that creature?
Yes, you could, yeah.
And that's a tough one to be honest, because then you have to take a turn off, then you get a turn on again to get another creature. I don't know, it gives you a lot of board presence, but I feel like even back when I played Hearthstone, it was rare that matchups kind of came down to board presence too much, and it was more either just put stuff on the board and hit the face, or it was a lot, not as much back and forth on the board as far as like, he has had stuff like Control Warrior where they just build up a ton of armor and then it doesn't matter what you have on your board. You play a brawl and then you take over from there. I'm going to go ahead and say that this one is, this one's got me kind of stumped, to be honest. I can see like the value on both sides. I'm going to go and say this one's not great.
Okay, so this card's actually very good. So this one, it's funny. Like, I'm gonna be honest, hearing your rationale on this card is crazy because, well, not crazy. It's just really cool to hear from like a professional mindset, like how you're analyzing a card. I think the problem with this card is that you're probably too used to the older variants of Hearthstone. This card, the stat line on some of the new minions are actually surprisingly great. Yeah. And because you could play this on turn 3 in a slower control warlock deck, you could just play this and then wait till you play a really big minion. Then you have like these extra stats immediately that can impact the board. Okay. What about this card?
4 mana, 3/3 Rush, Divine Shield, Taunt, and Wind Fury.
Do you remember what all those are, just to be clear?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
So 3/3 for 4 mana doesn't feel great for the stats wise. I mean, you get it's kind of like a board clear minion, like almost like a defensive board clear minion. It feels like where you put it down and you like try and deal with some threats on the board. But even then, 3/3 for 4 mana doesn't feel that great. Yeah, the biggest thing that I'm like is definitely making it hard for me to tell is like how important is Rush, I guess, because this is a shaman card, right?
Yeah.
So on its face, or as it is, 4 mana of 3/3, even with all of the bonuses, the keywords, I feel like if there's like some 0 mana, 1 mana, or something that can become 0 mana that like all of a sudden buffs us up to like a 7/7 or something, and was able to clear the board a lot easier or something, then I can see it being better. But I mean, I've been wrong so far. I'm calling all the cards bad so far, but this would be another one where I'm looking at it feels like it's not great. But so far, my track record for that has been bad.
Yeah. So this card's I don't want to say horrific, but it's not played. This one is just funny because it's just a bunch of keywords, and I just wanted to see how you'd react to it. But yeah, you're right. Like it's not that Shaman necessarily plays for the board, and then they're the ones being the aggressor, and someone has to react. That's not really the problem with this card. This card is just really understated. And in terms of like what Shaman has available to it, it doesn't really have a way to make this viable. And it probably never will because like there's just better things for Shaman to be doing, to be honest. Okay, what about this card?
Give your minions a death rattle, deal 3 damage to a random enemy. If you can get that many minions on the board, that seems pretty good because not only is it going to be hitting the opposing minions potentially, it could also hit the face. So it could be like just like you build a big board, you're ahead on board, play something like this, and then when your opponent goes to clear your board, they actually just lose the game because it's going to deal too much damage to their face. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and say that this card is probably not great. The idea of it is cool, but I feel like whenever I read cards like this in like Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic or anything like that, they always end up being bad because it's just like too much required to get this thing going. You need to have a big enough board, want to play this card. I mean, unless there's like a bunch of things that cost like 1 mana or 0 mana for Shaman. Of course, you always have your hero power to like put a totem in play, and then this could be played on the totem. But we'll go ahead and say that the 3 mana cost and having to have like a big enough board to get value out of this probably makes it not great.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I have never seen this card played once in the standard format, at least. So yeah, this one's a little interesting though, because it can be very impactful, like you said, but it just requires too much setup. And by the time you actually can like set it up, it's probably just too late in the game. And there's, again, better stuff you could be doing. Quick little tangent here. What is the most expensive Pokemon card you own? Because we can't talk about this in Hearthstone, so it's so exciting.
It's actually not, well, I guess the most expensive Pokemon card I own is one of my championship cards, probably. I have like a graded champion Ultra Ball from when I won the Oceania International Championship, so that's probably worth $5K, I think.
Congrats, man. That's
I don't have any like PSA 10 Charizards or anything like that. Like there's like little things that I like to collect in Pokemon, but I'm not, one of the more diehard collectors in the scene.
Some of those cards are like ridiculous amounts of money, right? So it's hard to get those for sure. Okay, sorry for the tangent. I just had to ask that. All right, next card. So this one, I don't know if you've ever got to see one of these cards before, but this is a dual class card. They do this sometimes. This is for Hunter and Mage because they both have secrets in their deck.
At the end of your turn, draw a secret. Okay, when I read it, I just assumed it was a death rattle. So, I mean, this seems pretty good in Mage, but I don't know. I guess the question really is, well, yeah, the thing is it has to be kind of, like in Mage, this seems kind of cool because especially in like, I'm thinking of like more of like a control mage or like a burn mage where you got to put the ice blocks and then whatever the other one was called, block, I think it was just called.
Ice barrier?
ice barrier. Was that it? You got 8 armor or whatever when they swung into you. So if you go like first and throw this down as a mage, like card draw, I feel like, or like getting specific cards out of your deck in Hearthstone has always felt very powerful. So in mage, this seems really good. Hunter, I don't know, secret hunter, I don't even remember. Like I remember it was like a deck multiple times throughout the time that I played. But I don't know, something like this, like in secret hunter, hunter's usually a more aggressive deck just in general. So even like a secret hunter deck, I don't know if you want something like this in play over like a leper gnome or something. So I don't even know if that card still exists. But I don't know. In mage, this seems kind of good, to be honest. This seems kind of cool in mage. So I'm gonna go ahead and say this card is good.
You know what's funny? I think it's the actual reverse. It's much better in hunter than it is in mage currently, which is actually hilarious. So I will tell you right now, Ice Block does not exist currently in the standard format. They realized very, very quickly after like a couple of years, like that card was disgusting. Hunter has had a lot of really good secrets printed recently. And because the difference of secrets, I don't know if you remember, obviously, but mage secrets cost 3, hunter secrets cost 2. So you actually curve into this as a hunter player, which is feeling really good because that means you can play the costume singer, follow it up with the secret, and then potentially it's protected, or you just get more tempo. Okay, speaking of hunter, by the way, here is another one. So just want to remind you, this hasn't really been relevant up until now. This is a legendary card, which means you can only put one of these into your deck. Just so we're on the same page here.
So 8 mana, 8/8, set the stats of the next 3 minions you play to 8/8. So as a battle cry, I mean, I don't know if there's anything that's costing. This is an 8 mana card, which is pretty late into the game. And then being able to play this and kind of maintain tempo. I don't know. It's just like you're gonna need to have. You have to be on 9 mana, or when you're on 8 mana, you have to have a 9th turn, and then also be able to use the minions you put into play. Now, if there are some minions that cost very low mana and have like rush, or not rush, but whatever the other one's called, where you can hit their face, charge.
Yes.
Yeah, so like you could play this on 9 and then play 3 things on, or play this on 8 and then on 9 play 3 things and then charge rush their face. That's the only way I see this card being good, unless there's just like a bunch of things that cost 0 mana. So you could like throw this down and then throw those down, and if those have rush, then that also works. But you already said that Mountain Giant's not a thing anymore. That's the only one I can think of. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to keep up. I'm gonna go ahead and say, and also it's on 8 mana, and like Hunter in general has always felt like a more aggressive deck to me. So I'm gonna say like this is probably too slow and probably not a great card in Hunter.
Okay, excellent analysis. This card, I've never seen this card get played either. Which is, it's funny that you figured this out. I showed this to a Yu-Gi-Oh player, and they thought it was broken, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. Yeah. You're entirely right. The problem with this card is at 8 mana, if it's not impacting the game immediately, it's often just too slow. And especially in a class like Hunter, where either A, they're going to be dead at that time, or you could just play something extremely more aggressive. This card has just never made the cut. Okay, here is the next one. So this one's for Paladin.
All right, we got 3/3, 4 mana. At the end of your turn, if this didn't attack, draw 2 cards. So immediately it'll draw you 2 cards then, right?
Yes, it would.
Okay, so in like some type of, I guess like control, usually when like control decks are referred to in Hearthstone, it's just cards that draw a lot of cards and then have like bigger cards they play later on. Because like for the most like control warlock or control mage, it was always just trying to draw a bunch of cards and then get bigger options later. If there's a control paladin deck, this actually seems decent because it puts a minion on the board. It is only a 3/3 for 4 mana, which we talked about that element card earlier. It's like 3/3 for 4 mana doesn't seem great, but the draw 2, if you're really trying to draw into like those bigger plays for later on, and this can like respond to some other minion on the board potentially on the next turn. At the very least, it's drawing you 2 cards and giving you a body for the following turn to follow up on. And card draw is really good in Hearthstone, like non-rush decks usually most of the time, it felt like, or it feels like. So I'm gonna go ahead and say this card is decent.
Decent's probably a good answer for this. I'm gonna be real again. I have personally never seen this card get played. Now this card was released in the same expansion as the card previously, so it hasn't been around for that long. But generally speaking, the problem with this card is it's a little too awkward to really fit into your deck because on 4 mana, you want to be doing something better. Okay, so this one's for Priest. This has tradeable. So the way tradeable works is if you hover this card over your deck, you could cycle it for 1 card and that costs 1 mana.
I mean, Priest has always been, back when I played, once again, it was always more of like a mid-range deck where it was like a little bit more towards board control. I think Priest is maybe like the most board control center deck, if I can remember, besides like Druid. Like Druid and Hunter put a lot of minions on board, but they're just trying to hit your face most of the time. So being able to cycle it is nice. Silence all minions. I mean, that kind of just comes down to, is there enough stuff where you want to silence it? But like this seems like a decent as like a one of to include if the meta's right. Like if there's enough stuff where it's just like if you silence your opponent's board, you just win the game, then it's good. Tradeable is like a cool thing because then you're not really losing too much, but it makes it a more consistent card overall to include as a tech card. So I'd say I mean, to me, it just seems like a decent tech card if the meta's right.
This card's probably one of the best cards I've ever seen in Hearthstone.
Is silencing that good right now?
It is. Well, it's not even the silencing. I think like tradable as a keyword is so powerful. Most of the time, almost like I want to say at least 60% of the cards that contain tradable are played. Not because they're necessarily broken, but because the fact that you could always cycle it means that it's just not a dead card in your hand. If you don't need it, you can move on and get something else, which is really, really undervalued. It seems like every person I've showed tradable doesn't really recognize how good that is. I told you I'm showing you one Demon Hunter card. This is the Demon Hunter card.
5 mana, 4/5. It is a legendary. Battle cry for the rest of the game. Cast a copy of the first spell you draw each turn at enemies. Oh, man. I mean, that seems good if you're like a very spell heavy. I mean, it's like this in mage seems like it would be really good, but it's not a mage. Because then every spell you wait. Yeah, because every spell you wait for the rest of the game, cast a copy of the first spell you draw. Oh, the first spell you draw each turn. Okay, I have to reread that again. That was the first spell you cast at enemies. So it's not as good because then you're really reliant on the RNG of your top decks. But like, I guess there could be some type of Demon Hunter type deck where you play this on 5 and then from there you just play draw cards. I guess one of the problems with this card as well would probably be, I don't remember if there's like 0 mana draw cards for Demon Hunter or not, but like if you play this down, maybe you're not playing anything else until the next turn to draw cards. So you're kind of losing out on the potential stats tempo you could have. Yeah, I think if there's I just have to know about the other Demon Hunter cards. So I'm gonna go ahead and say that this card is probably not great. I feel like I'm gonna regret this one.
Wow. Okay. So when I first, I actually give you some history here before we even get into this. Demon Hunter is the most egregious class when it comes to drawing cards and spending mana. Their class identity, dude, since the beginning they've been released is damage and drawing. Like that's what they do. So when we first saw this card, I was very nervous because this is an effect that just wins you the game if you play it on turn 5 and you're not dying, right? It actually turns out that this effect isn't the best thing to have in your mulligan. Maybe it's just the circumstances of the metagame we're in, but this card is like middle of the pack in the deck that it's played. It's not bad, right? Don't get me wrong, but it's not like the meta breaker that I thought it would be. I'm going to show you probably the most interesting card that Hearthstone has released in the past like 5 years. So to remind you, the base health in Hearthstone is 30 and the normal deck size is 30.
Okay, so a 3 mana 3/4, and as soon as you include it in your deck, you get to play 40 cards and you have 40 health. Yeah,
so you put it in your deck in the deck builder, you'll get additional 10 slots. And then, 9 slots, I guess, depending if you count this as your 31st card or 30th card. Then when the game actually starts, you have that start a game effect, and then it shows you that Prince Renathal is giving you the additional health.
Yeah, that's an interesting one for sure. Deck size is like an interesting thing in like other card games. Like in Pokemon, you have to play 60 cards, and there's no, you can't do anything outside of that. And like Magic, everyone plays with 60 cards, but you can play as much as you want in Magic, actually.
Right.
So you can go with like an infinite. Well, not you have to be able to reasonably shuffle your deck. I think that's the rule. But no one plays more than 60 cards. Or rarely you'll see like 61, 62. So this one's tough. It really just comes down to the quality of cards. Is there 10 extra really good cards? So for some classes, I'm sure this could be a possibility. And then especially if you look at stuff like, I guess maybe not as much Mage anymore from what you told me about Mage. Maybe like Warlock, because Warlock still sounds like it's a pretty control type deck. So like in Warlock, this seems kind of good. More health, be able to burn or to use your hero power every turn. But then is there that many good quality of cards to actually fill your deck? Or are you just going to be drawing into bad cards too often and you just lose because the quality of your cards you're playing each turn is so much lower? Is there actually 40 good cards? Or I guess in this case, yeah, because like, I mean, 3 mana 3/4 seems, it's like okay. That's like not great. So you're really looking for that value from the extra high quality cards and really just the extra health, I guess, is the biggest thing. But I don't know if there's enough quality cards to fill those extra 9 slots. So I'm gonna go ahead and say this card is probably not great, but it would be really cool if there was a good deck with this card in it.
Okay, so this is probably the most impactful card that Hearthstone's had in my most recent memory. This card, when it was released, was meta breaking. I think the one key information I haven't really keyed you in on is the drawing in Hearthstone, like draw cards in general, have just gotten much better. The new dev team really likes the idea of like playing cards is fun, so let's give you cards to play with. Right?
Makes sense.
So that means that Prince Renathal as a card is not as detrimental of adding an extra 10 cards into your deck for the 40 health. This, when it was released, I promise you, drastically changed the game. And there was probably a deck for each class trying this card out. Now, not every class decided to actually keep it, but this card was so impactful to the game that they actually decided to nerf it. This is the pre-nerf version. Nowadays, it says your deck size is 40 and your starting health is 35.
Okay, so they had to cut back on the health because the health seems like the bigger buff for sure.
Yes. Let me ask you a random question. Do you think a card that says your deck size is 15 and your starting health is 15 would be played in Hearthstone?
Probably. Because for like an well, it depends if there's actually 15 cards where you could actually kill your opponent in 15 cards. But I imagine there would be. Yeah, I mean, like for an aggro deck, it just sounds like it'd be good for an aggro deck, right? This one's good for later game control decks. It sounds like that'd be good for an aggro deck.
Yeah, I see. I think about this a lot because I wonder they added a new format called Twist, which is like basically standard Hearthstone, but they're kind of changing the rules a little bit. And one of the next ones is depending on how big your deck is, starting at 30 all the way up to 40, that's how much health you have. So if you have 33 cards in your deck, you have 33 life. I think they probably tested the reverse and realized, wait a minute, like this is probably ridiculous.
All right, what do we got? 5 mana, 3/6 rush. Whenever this attacks, give +1/1 to all minions in your hand. Oh man, this seems rush. So it's only attacking once. If you could somehow give this thing like Wind Fury or something, then attacking twice. This seems like it would like be building up to some kind of potential lethal on the next turn. But 1/1 +1/+1 is so low, and a 3/6 for 5 mana. I don't see this card being very good. This one's not great.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, this one's trash. See, one of the things I really try to do with these videos is like the mind game aspect, because you were like, you didn't think Prince Renathal was as good, right? So if I slide that one in and be like, oh yeah, like Prince Renathal is actually broken, maybe you change it. Yeah, this card's actually been in the standard format for a little bit, and I don't think I've ever seen it. Maybe like free to play players probably give this a chance, just because like it's not a horrible card, but yeah. Okay, here is a very spicy one.
I recognize the artwork from Battlegrounds, but yeah, 10, 10, the Jailer, Battlecry, destroy your deck. For the rest of the game, your minions are immune.
Okay, so quickly before you analyze this, let me explain what immune actually means. Immune means your cards can't be targeted. So if there is a card that says destroy all minions on board, your minions will still die. I just want to make that very clear.
All right, so this 10 mana is just so much mana. And then you do destroy your deck. So that means at the beginning of each of your turns, you are going to be taking a damage, right? It stacks up 1, the next turn 2, and so on.
Increments, but it increments +1 every single time,
This just looks like it would be a tech card for a certain matchup. Like maybe like something like, I'm trying to think like a druid player up against some kind of type of control player. You get your board established, but it's not good enough because your minions are getting picked off. You play this on 10, then your board is protected, and you just like swing twice to their face and you win from there. So it just seems like it would be like, I can't imagine this being like a game plan. Get to 10 mana, play the Jailer. That doesn't seem like it's good enough to make a strategy around. So yeah, overall it seems like a tech card. So I would say like in terms of good versus not good is probably not great, but when it could be a tech card, but 10 mana is just so much. I just feel like, 10 mana cards are like almost never played like consistently, I guess. I don't know. I'm trying to think of like there was Pyro Ball and Mage that cost 10 mana, I believe.
Pyro Ball. Pyroblast, yeah, you're right. Sorry,
Pyroblast.
You said that was hilarious.
So like there was that for 10 mana, but you were like building up to that as like your win condition. This doesn't seem like it can be a consistent win condition against every matchup. So it seems more like it's a potential like tech card to include in a deck.
Yeah, so I think you're entirely right. That's a really good way of saying it. This card does have a way to like actually win a game of solitaire against another control deck. Just because like the immune thing is actually pretty great. There's also cards in the game that say like if your hero would take damage, this would take it instead, and you could play that minion with the Jailer. Then you just never die unless your opponent actually has like an AOE clear to clear both. Unfortunately for the Jailer, as cool as this effect is, it didn't really see a ton of play. There are niche moments where this card ended up seeing play. Okay, what about this card? So this is a weapon. Just want to remind you that a weapon can be equipped and you don't need to swing with it, but it does have the durability just like the location.
So with this having 0 attack, so it still eats up a durability. Okay.
Yes, yeah. When you use the effect, it says, obviously reading the card explains the card, so I'll let you read it.
After you cast a spell, summon an element with stats equal to its cost, lose 1 durability. And what is this a shaman card?
This is a mage card.
It was a mage card. Okay, I just saw the blue and I couldn't quite tell which one it was.
You're good.
Man, for 2 mana, for 2 mana to play this early, and then if you're like a spell-based mage deck, that seems pretty good. Yeah, I would say this card seems pretty good.
Yeah, it's okay. It's a very nutty card. Very
it's really good.
Yeah, it's played in like every mage deck. It's funny though, because when this card was showcased, not a lot of people were like that excited for it, because it's like, oh, like what is this guy? I don't want like a 3 mana 3/3 for like when I cast the spell. But turns out that additional tempo is actually like winning you games. Last card I'm going to show you.
Secret Passage for 1 mana. Replace your hand with 4 cards from your deck. Swap back next. Do you get to pick the cards?
No, so you play this card, or your current hand goes in like a weird void area for the time being.
Yeah.
You then draw 4 cards from your deck. That is your new hand until you hit the end turn button. Any card you add to your hand while you're in the Secret Passage hand will be added to your previous hand.
Interesting.
And at the end of your turn, they swap back.
This seems like a pretty powerful card because we've mentioned like draw power multiple times while I've been doing this, I've been talking about draw power, and draw power is usually pretty good, especially like you're effectively drawing 4 cards for 1 mana. You don't get to keep them, but you said any cards you generate from those cards you do keep.
Yes. Yep.
I mean, that's like the most efficient draw power I think I've ever seen in Hearthstone. The only thing would be like, can those 4 cards consistently fill out the rest of your mana so you don't fall behind on tempo? So it'd be like, if you play this, you draw 4 cards, and they're all 1-drops, then it's like, well, that's not great if you played on like turn 6 or 7. But because if your previous hand, because you've been kind of working with your previous hand for a couple turns, so you've been like kind of, tempoing it out turn after turn to try and get it to work the best it can into follow-up turns. I don't know, this just seems really good because that's 4 new cards to look at and play with.
So I'm going to tell you this right now. What you said was this is the best draw you've ever seen in Hearthstone. That is an entirely accurate analysis of this card. This card is no longer in standard, but when it was in standard, it was played in literally every rogue deck for its Remainer. It's absolutely absurd that they printed this. It would even shock you that they printed this card saying replace your hand with 5 cards from your deck, not 4.
Oh man.
When it was first released, still 1 mana. So yeah, it's a real in Hearthstone, dude. I'm telling you, it's wacky. The reason I bring this card up though, because I had a feeling that you would see that this card's really good. Would this card see play in Pokemon?
If it was an item, it would definitely be played, but it would be way too good as an item card. But if it has a supporter card, because supporter cards you can only play 1 each turn. Item cards you can play as many as you want. If it's a supporter card, it's weird. We effectively have stuff like this in Pokemon as far as a supporter card goes, where you keep your hand and then you can draw like 3 or 4 cards on top of your current hand as your supporter for a turn. So that kind of already exists in Pokemon. Yeah, it would have to be an item card, but then as an item card, it would be too good, I think. If you just like put your hand, well, yeah, because if you ended your turn, your sequence of your current turn, you play like your Professor's Research, which I'm pretty sure you've probably played before, discard your hand, draw 7 cards.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you played out you exhausted the resources from that hand, and then you went Secret Passage, put your hand aside, pick up the top 4, play any of those you want. That would probably be pretty good as an item card, but it would probably be too good as an item card. That extra extension of 4 cards would be like a lot to work with.
Yeah. So when I was coming up with the cards for this video, I was trying to think about what cards would actually see play in Pokemon. And this is the one card in my back of my mind that I was like, I could see this actually being a Pokemon card and it being actually very meta. But you're right. So for people who don't know, you don't have a limit on your hand size in Pokemon either, right?
No limit.
No limit. So yeah, I saw the card that was you discard your whole hand and draw 7 cards. That card was pretty nutty in specific decks. So I was curious to see how good Secret Passage would be. And you're right. If you passaged and drew that card, it'd be absolutely bonkers. Like it'd be incredible. Okay, dude. Well, that was all the cards I wanted to show you. I hope this was fun. It was fun for me. Yeah, I will say, like, I think you're the first pro player, at least from a different card game, that I've spoken to. A lot of the people are like just strictly content creators. So the way you analyze cards is a lot more nuanced. I want to talk about not disrespecting anyone who has done this before, but it's cool to listen to your thought process.
And I have like that little bit of background in Hearthstone, which I think makes a little bit of a difference as well. So I can like, it was like when I read like Yu-Gi-Oh and Magic cards for the first time ever, I was like, bro, I don't know what's going on here.